Today I'm making carne guisada, which is a Mexican dish that's cooked all over Texas, and it consists of beef that's braised in a very subtle but aromatic chili-based sauce. Now this really isn't restaurant food, but is more in the style of comida casera, or home-style cooking. And it starts by choosing the right cut of beef. Now here I have a 3-pound chuck roast of beef. Chuck again comes from the shoulder, which is great for braising because it turns meltingly tender. Now you really want to cut the stew meat yourself. That's how you know it's all from the same cut of meat. So don't be tempted to buy that pre-cut stew meat because you don't know where that meat came from. It could have come from the leg, which would be unbearably tough. So from the chuck or the shoulder is what you want. And to cut it into big 1-inch chunks, first you just want to slice it into 1-inch slabs of meat. And then it gets really easy to carve out any big hunks of fat and cut it further down into 1-inch pieces. All right, so setting those aside, you can see there's this big knob of fat right in the middle. And you can almost just pull the meat away from it. And then when you get to, a fairly lean piece, you just cut it down into 1-inch pieces. Now I am leaving some chunks of fat in there. Those will render out during cooking and add valuable flavor. I'm just taking out sort of the big hunks of fat. Now I'm going to pat it dry quickly with paper towels. And I do this just by dumping the meat onto a couple layers of paper towels, taking a few more over the top, and just press it dry. And then season it with salt and pepper. And here I have a nice big pot that's going to accommodate all the braising liquid and all the beef. And I have 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil heating up over medium-high heat. And I can see it's starting to shimmer and a few wisps of smoke, which means it's time to add the beef. I'm only going to add half the beef, and I'm going to brown it really well. Now, it's not as much about browning the meat as it is about creating a flavorful fond, or those brown bits on the bottom of the pot, because that fond adds crucial flavor to the braise. All right, so I'm going to let that beef brown for about 10 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to chop some vegetables for the stew, namely onions. So this recipe calls for 2 onions, and that's about 2 cups of chopped onions. All right, so again, that's 2 onions. So it's been about 10 minutes, and I'm going to show you a piece of browned meat. See that beautiful caramelized browning on the beef? That's what you want to look for. And also, there's a decent amount of fond on the bottom of the pot, which again is crucial for the flavor of the sauce. Now, as I mentioned before, we're just going to brown 1 batch of meat. To the fat in the pot, I'm going to add 2 chopped onions and a teaspoon of table salt. And we're just going to cook these onions till they soften, and that takes about 5 minutes. But as they cook, I'm going to be conscious of that fond. I'm going to be scraping it up so that it doesn't burn. So those onions have been cooking for about 5 minutes, and they're nicely softened. Now it's time to add some more flavor to the pot, starting with 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 4 cloves of minced garlic, a tablespoon of chili powder. Now I'm going to add a tablespoon of dried oregano, 2 teaspoons of dried coriander, and 1.5 teaspoons of dried cumin. Now you just want to cook these spices for about a minute until they're fragrant and you can smell them. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to add just a tablespoon of all-purpose flour. And this is just a little bit of a thickener to help thicken up the sauce as it cooks. Next goes in some chicken broth. This is 1 cup of chicken broth. Last to go in the pot are some tomatoes. Now I'm going to use canned tomatoes. There's a 14.5-ounce can of diced tomatoes, but I'm first going to drain the juice away, so you're just left with the tomato solids. All right, tomato solids go in the pot. So that's it for the sauce. In goes the browned beef and the unbrowned beef, along with any accumulated juices. Now I'm just going to bring this to a simmer, and then we're going to cook it in the oven for about 1.5 hours at a low temperature of 325 degrees. That stew's been in the oven for 1.5 hours, and now it's time to add the vegetables. You really don't want to add them at the beginning of the cooking time because they'll just be overcooked by the time the beef is tender. So for vegetables, it's just a simple combination of Yukon Gold potatoes, about 1 pound, and 2 green bell peppers. So first, of course, you want to peel the Yukon Golds, slice it into 1/2-inch thick slices, and then cut each slice lengthwise into 1/2-inch thick pieces. All right, so again, that's 1 pound of Yukon Gold, which is about 2 large potatoes. Into a bowl they go. And now for the green pepper. We're just going to slice it into 1/4-inch thick slices. What I like to do is cut off the top and the bottom of the pepper, I set these aside. I don't throw those out. I always use those. And now I cut down through one side of the pepper and I open it up. And as you open it up, you can really rip out or sometimes cut out the core, the ribs, and all the seeds. So cutting the pepper this way means you wind up with a big strip of pepper like this that you can then cut down into any shape you like. And for this stew, it's 1/4 inch thick slices. So starting at one end, you can just cut all the way down. Don't forget the tops and the bottom, never throw them out. So that is it for the vegetables. Now let's get that stew out of the oven and take a good look at it. Oh. This is gorgeous. That sauce is reduced, the meat's brown and almost tender. And now the vegetables. So the stew needs another 45 minutes in the oven until the beef is good and tender and the vegetables are cooked through. Whew, the aroma coming from this oven is something else. All right, time to take a look. Oh, you can smell the cumin and the coriander and the oregano. Now time to test the meat for doneness. You want it falling apart tender. The best way to do that is with a fork. Oh yeah, fork goes right through the meat with no resistance. It's done. All right, now I'm just gonna add a little bit of fresh black pepper and a hint of salt. Oh, that looks delicious. Now serving this dish is simple, just with some warm tortillas. You spoon a little bit of the meat and the potatoes and vegetables into the center of each. Spritz with some fresh lime juice and a few leaves of fresh cilantro. And that's it, carne guisada. It is perfect. The beef is tender, the sauce is silky with a little bit of tomato flavor and those fragrances of coriander and cumin, and of course the vegetables add their own little fresh bite. To make this delicious Texan Mexican dish, start with a 3-pound chuck roast and brown just half of it in the pot. Be sure to add the vegetables during the last 45 minutes of cooking and serve with fresh limes and cilantro. From Cook's Country, a great recipe for carne guisada.
Thanks for watching Cook's Country from America's Test Kitchen. So what'd you think?
Leave a comment and let us know which recipes you're excited to make, or just say hi.
Now you can find links to today's recipes and reviews in the video description.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
See you later.
Alligator.